The Mystery Inc. gang had seen their share of creepy fairgrounds and spooky castles, but nothing about the boarded-up husk of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza sat right with them. It loomed at the edge of the small town like a haunted monument. Rusted bolts sealed its windows shut. The painted faces of Freddy, Bonnie, and Chica on the faded sign out front were cracked and streaked with grime. The laughter of children had long since been replaced by the silence of dust and boarded doors. It was Velma who had found the tip. An anonymous letter slipped into their mailbox with no return address. The note was brief. Freddy's is hiding something. A child is missing. Don't trust the cops. That was all it took. Inside the mystery machine, Velma was already rattling off a list of strange events associated with the pizza chain. A string of missing children between 1983 and 1987. Rumors of violent animatronic malfunctions, and a final abrupt closure just after something referred to as the bite of 87. Fred furrowed his brow, clutching the wheel as he slowed the van near the curb. We've handled fakers and costumed creeps, but this one feels different, he muttered. Daphne agreed. There was something hollow in the air here. Shaggy, munching nervously on a sandwich, offered a half laugh. Maybe we should just, let the pizza place stay dead, man. Despite their usual banter, unease clung to them as they stepped out. The town itself felt strange, too. A small corner store had "Help Us" scrawled on its boarded windows. A bulletin board displayed years-old missing posters of children, their eyes faded from sun exposure. Freddy's wasn't just an abandoned business. It was the centerpiece of a community that had lost something precious, and no one would talk about it. Velma led the gang around the side entrance of the pizzeria, where she had learned from old blueprints there was a broken fire exit latch. As Fred pried it open, a cold rush of air swept past them. Inside was pitch darkness, only occasionally pierced by the dying flicker of an exit sign down the hall. They stepped inside cautiously. The smell of rotting wood and mildew thickened the air. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, once the shining attraction for children's birthday parties, was now a shadow of its former self. The stage at the center of the dining hall was empty, the curtains shredded. Broken party hats and rotted animatronic limbs lay scattered like the remnants of a nightmare. Scooby sniffed the floor and gave a low, concerned growl. "Ruh-roh," Shaggy whispered. "We're definitely not alone." A sudden mechanical whir broke the silence, and an ancient jukebox in the far corner lit up on its own, playing a distorted rendition of the Freddy Fazbear jingle. The gang froze. Then something moved in the shadows. A flash of red eyes, the flicker of a jaw. Bonnie the Bunny. But as quickly as he appeared, he was gone, disappearing down a hallway that should have been blocked by debris. He wasn't wearing a costume, Velma whispered. No zipper, no seams. That wasn't a person. Fred, trying to regain control, suggested they split up to cover more ground, sticking to pairs. Shaggy and Scooby, of course, protested, but Fred calmed them with a promise of leftover pizza. Velma grimaced at the thought. As Fred and Velma headed toward the security office, Daphne ventured into the back kitchen, where she found old employee logs and incident reports, many blacked out with permanent marker. She also found the first clue, a child's drawing. It showed a smiling Freddy, standing beside a crying figure in purple. On the back was scrawled, "He said he'd bring us back." Meanwhile, Fred found an old tape player in the security booth. Popping in the last remaining cassette, they heard garbled audio, a man's voice, distant and resigned. "If you're hearing this, it means the animatronics have already accessed the safe room. Do not let them inside. We tried to warn them. The kids, they're still in there." Static cut the message short, but both Fred and Velma stared at one another with growing horror. What began as a missing person case was rapidly escalating into something they didn't fully understand. At the same time, Shaggy and Scooby, trying to locate the kitchen, wandered into the parts and service room, stumbling over what appeared to be an old spring-lock suit. Covered in rust and leaking something thick and black, the golden Freddy suit appeared to shift slightly on its own. "Like, nope," Shaggy yelled, bolting with Scooby in tow. The gang reconvened near the front doors, breathless. Velma revealed the real bombshell. She had found an old, burned map tucked behind the circuit breaker. It showed another location, Fredbear's family diner, marked prototype testing, don't disclose to Fazbear Ent. Fred's eyes narrowed. Looks like Freddy wasn't the beginning, just the middle. As they stepped back outside, storm clouds began to gather above. In the far distance, a figure in purple watched from an alley, his eyes gleaming beneath a security guard's cap. A faint smile curled on his lips. The gang didn't sleep that night. Back at the motel, Velma spread out a map of the town on the desk, overlaying it with a torn blueprint of the pizzeria and the burned diagram of Fredbear's family diner they had found. Freddy's was built over something, she muttered, tracing the lines with a flashlight. A prior location, or maybe a cover-up. Daphne, staring at photos of the missing kids pulled from the bulletin board earlier that day, noticed a pattern. Every child had vanished within the same 3-month span, during the summer of 1987. Fred, pacing nearby, spoke with quiet urgency. Whoever this purple guy is, he knew the gang would be here. He's watching us. He wants us to find something. Shaggy and Scooby were huddled on the bed under 3 layers of blankets, occasionally peeking out to chew nervous mouthfuls of cold pizza. "Like, I don't want to find anything," Shaggy whispered. "I just want to leave something, like this town." But they didn't leave. By sunrise, they were back in the mystery machine, following Velma's coordinates to a narrow wooded trail that eventually led them to the outskirts of town. Hidden behind rows of trees and half sunken in overgrowth stood the skeleton of Fredbear's family diner, its wooden walls rotted and its neon sign shattered. But unlike Freddy's, this building felt dead, as if it had been intentionally erased from the world's memory. Inside the diner was frozen in time. Faded banners that read "Celebrating Friendship" drooped from the rafters. Tables were still set for long-past birthday parties. Cupcake trays now housed insects, and animatronic parts rusted beneath moldy tarps. Daphne, holding a flashlight, swept the beam across the stage and gasped. There was a name etched into the wood with a knife. Cassidy. Velma uncovered a handwritten journal hidden beneath a floorboard backstage. It was brittle but legible, penned by someone only referred to as Henry. It told of failed safety protocols, an unnamed partner who went too far, and a machine designed to capture the soul. The final pages were smeared and abrupt. "I hear the children now. I see the yellow suit in my dreams. Fredbear's watching." As they explored deeper into the diner's bowels, they found an elevator panel behind a collapsed shelf. The mechanism was ancient, but Velma rewired it, using parts from her toolkit. The elevator creaked and groaned as it descended, revealing a hidden underground facility, a cold, metallic contrast to the wooden diner above. The walls here were lined with monitors and archaic animatronic schematics. A control room labeled "Springlock Testing" housed 2 rusted suits, one of them missing a head, the other covered in dried blood. It was here that the true horror became impossible to ignore. Velma accessed a corrupted hard drive, playing several audio logs recovered from a dusty computer. A man's voice, distorted and low, filled the room. They thought we were making entertainment, but we were building a cage. Something walked into that suit. Something that couldn't die. Daphne, trembling, whispered, "What if the ghosts are real?" For the first time, Mystery Inc. had encountered a case where the unmasking might not reveal a man in a costume, but something truly beyond reason. Back above ground, strange things began happening. Scooby froze, staring down the hallway of the derelict diner. Freddy, he whimpered. For just a second, they all saw it. Fredbear, standing at the end of the hall, motionless, until he twitched. Lights began to flicker violently. Every device on Velma's wrist buzzed with static. Something was here, and it didn't want them to leave. They sprinted, stumbling over fallen beams as the lights exploded behind them. Shaggy tripped and fell, screaming as the floor beneath him opened like a trap door. He slid down a chute and landed hard inside an old security room deep underground. The rest of the gang scrambled after him and realized they weren't alone. Old security monitors buzzed to life, displaying multiple angles of Freddy Fazbear's pizza. Even though the building was abandoned, something was moving inside. On the west hallway monitor, Chica twitched unnaturally and turned to face the camera. The screen cut to black. Velma put it together instantly. They're still active. The animatronics aren't just haunted, they're hunting. Fred nodded grimly. Then we need to go back. If we're going to stop whatever happened here from happening again, we need to face it. As they left Fredbear's diner, a lone figure stepped out from the trees behind them. Purple guy, holding an old Freddy head in one hand and a spring-lock trigger in the other, he muttered, "You kids don't know when to stop, but that's fine. The show must go on." The stage was set. The real horror hadn't begun yet. Before, though the building hadn't changed, at least not in any physical way. But it felt different now, as if the structure itself had awakened in their absence, aware that its secrets had been disturbed. The click of the Mystery Machine's doors echoed across the parking lot like thunder. Fred stared at the neon sign above, now flickering erratically. "If we go in," he said, "we might not all come out." Velma led the way. "Then we go in smarter." Inside, the gang split into pairs, against every horror movie instinct they'd ever developed. But this time, they had no choice. Daphne and Velma would search the old manager's office and security systems. Fred and Shaggy would sweep the party rooms and stage. Scooby stayed with them both, darting between the groups with a courage born of terror. Down in the manager's office, Velma booted up the central console. The screens, long dead, roared to life with flickering static and grainy live feeds. The animatronics were already moving. Freddy stood in the hallway outside the parts and service room. Bonnie was nowhere to be seen. Chica was standing in the kitchen, staring at the camera directly, unmoving. And Foxy's curtain was wide open. Then they saw him, purple guy, walking calmly through the main dining room, dragging something heavy in a trash bag, a spring-lock suit. His face was obscured, but his posture was stiff, purposeful. Velma zoomed in, her fingers trembling. He's not just cleaning up, he's getting ready to perform. Meanwhile, Fred and Shaggy found the main dining hall decorated as if for a party. Balloons floated where there had been none before. "Like, this wasn't here before, right?" Shaggy said. On the wall, the words "Let's Party" had been freshly repainted in red. Fred reached for his radio but only heard garbled static. Behind them, the animatronic band began to move. Bonnie turned its head, joints creaking. Shaggy screamed. They ran. Foxy burst from Pirate Cove and gave chase, limbs snapping unnaturally fast, eyes glowing white. Fred grabbed Shaggy by the collar and threw them both behind the security gate just as it slammed shut. That wasn't a person in a suit, Fred gasped. That was something else. Daphne and Velma realized they had to act fast. They hacked into the intercom system and began broadcasting the missing children's names aloud. Names Velma had found in the underground files at Fredbear's: Cassidy, Susie, Gabriel, Fritz, Jeremy. If there's anyone, anything still in there, she said, they need to remember who they were. In the darkness, the animatronics stopped moving. The air shifted. Chica tilted her head slowly and let out a metallic whimpering groan. Freddy's glowing eyes dimmed to a soft blue, just for a moment, as if something long buried had flickered back into place. Even Foxy in mid-attack halted and slowly stepped back into his cove. But it wasn't over. Purple Guy struck from behind. He lunged at Velma with a spring-loaded blade hidden in a Freddy glove. Daphne tackled him just in time, but he slashed her shoulder. Blood hit the monitors. "You don't understand," he growled, voice shaking with barely contained madness. "They want to perform. The show must go on. It's not me they're afraid of. It's him." "Who?" Velma shouted, pressing a hidden button under the desk that activated the old lockdown protocol. The screen above them flashed. Fredbear activated. In the basement chamber below, the golden animatronic twitched back to life. Not like the others. This one moved slowly, deliberately, with the unnatural smoothness of a dream turning to a nightmare. Velma watched in horror as the screen filled with static. And then, a shadow behind Purple Guy. His smile dropped. No, not now, not yet. Fredbear grabbed him. He screamed, a sound that echoed through the vents and corridors. No suit, no spring locks, just raw, vengeful force. The animatronic dragged him into the shadows, and then, silence. The gang reunited in the lobby as backup sirens began to wail in the distance. Daphne was pale but alive. Velma was shaken. Fred had cuts on his arms. Scooby held Shaggy tightly by the neck like a scared child clutching a stuffed toy. "They weren't just ghosts," Velma said. "They were children. And he trapped them here. Turned them into parts of a show no one wanted to see." Fred walked to the stage. Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy stood still now, lifeless, but not hostile, just tired, worn down by time and torment. He looked at them. "Show's over!" The next morning, the sun rose over a sealed crime scene. The building was scheduled for demolition. The case had officially closed. But for the gang, nothing would be the same again. Daphne's bandage was fresh. Velma uploaded her files to a secret encrypted drive. Fred drove in silence for a long time. Shaggy and Scooby, unusually quiet, held hands in the back seat. "Guys," Velma finally said, "there was no mask to pull off. There was no man pretending to be a ghost. This time, the monsters were real." And Fred, eyes on the road, simply replied, "Then we'd better be ready next time."